I like the heat. I don't know what happened. It's kind of weird. I know, but I'm still not going to accept it. Well, we're on part three of Judges, or the Judges, and I apologize. I didn't have a chance to get here early tonight and get my notes into the computer. But I'm going to be in Judges chapter 6 and chapter 7 pretty much all night long. I have 8 pages of notes, and that's the condensed version. So if I don't get through this all tonight, don't worry. I'm not going to hold you here until 9:30. I'm going to let you out on normal time, 8 o'clock. But I'm going to try to get through as much of this as possible, okay? So first, again, let me just say a huge thank you to Brother Joey for stepping up last week. When I didn't find out I had to go to Houston to the last minute last week, and I just kind of grabbed him on Sunday. I was like, hey, you want to preach? And he's like, sure. I said, I'm sending you my notes. So he took care of it, and so I really appreciate him doing that. And he shared about Deborah last week and how God used her amazing leadership gifts in an amazing way to pull the nation of Israel back towards God after being oppressed. And the first week we looked at the 3 first judges in Judges, and we talked about not getting stuck in apostasy and not going hot and cold basically for God. One minute we're serving God because we're desperate for him, we need him, and then when things are going good again, we kind of fall to the wayside. And things get bad again, we're like, oh, God, I need you again, right? And so, and that's really the story of the Judges, and we'll see that as we continue in this series on the book of Judges. But my message for tonight, or my thought for tonight's message is this. God uses our weakness in order to show his glory. God uses our weakness in order to show his glory. One of the most commonly asked job interview questions these days is, it goes something like this. What is your greatest weakness? Have you ever been asked that question in a job interview? I've asked that question to people in job interviews, and I love some of the responses I get. And I put my 2 favorite ones down. My first favorite one is this. I'm a perfectionist. A perfectionist. And I'm like, I am not, and that's not weak, that's just crazy. And so, don't ask me. I'm like, I'm not a perfectionist. I'm one of those guys, I'm like, that's good, it's working, ain't it? Like, let's go. I have a coworker of mine who is an extreme perfectionist, and we'll be working together, doing jobs together, and I'm like, my mentality is we just got to get this thing up and running as fast as possible. I'm like, if it looks a little dirty when we're done with it, that's okay. It's working. Like, people, they don't see what happens in the background, right? They only see it's working on their computer. And so, by the way, I guess some other Oceanair people. I work for Oceanair too. And so, yeah, I don't know if I'm the problem with PeopleSoft. Anyway, so he understands. As long as we can get that stuff keeping running and operation, I'm like, I don't care how it looks on the back end. But he's like just the opposite of me. So we go back and forth all the time. But it can be a weakness because sometimes it'll stop us from doing everything that we need to do because they're so deep in the details, right? And other times, my weakness is I'm not a perfectionist, so I can get the job done fast. But when you come after me, like, what the heck did this dude do? I'm like, I don't know, it's working. So there's some different plays on that, right? Another one that I love, and I heard this one not too long ago. We asked this question, and this guy responded back to us: I work too hard. I'm like, wait, what? I'm like, that's not a weakness, man. Like, that should be a strength. He's like, no, I just work too hard. He says, I'll work myself to the point where I get exhausted, and then the next thing I know, I struggle, day to day. And I'm like, oh, I never looked at it that way. And so you see people in that side of the fence too, where they work too hard, trying to do something, and not taking that break that we all need, right? Everyone needs a good break. And so if we were to be really honest with ourselves today, most of us in here, that we try to hide our weaknesses. And oftentimes we'll do it with some little clever wordings like that. Well, I'm a perfectionist, or I work too hard. But if we get to and just were to be real about it, our weaknesses are kind of what defines us more than anything else. Because our weaknesses is what talks to us in the hidden places. Our strengths don't really talk to us in the hidden places. It's our weaknesses. It's the things that we struggle with. It's the areas of life that are difficult for us. And I want to look at one of the coolest stories in the Bible, in my opinion. And it's a story of this guy named Gideon, who had some weaknesses, but God used them for his glory. So after Deborah had helped out Israel as the judge, Israel did evil again, and God said they dropped into that apostasy again. And this time they fell into the hands of the Midianites. And for 7 years, they were under the rule of the Midianites. And the Midianites' rules was different. When they were ruled by the Midianites, it wasn't so much like, oh, there's a new king in town. The Midianites were just bullies, for the sake of a better word. Every time the Israelites would try to go out and plant stuff and do something big, the Midianites would be like, ha, here we come. And they come in on their horses and chariots, and they would destroy all the crops and destroy everything that they would put together. If you were an Israelite, you were trying to build a new house, the Midianites would be like, sucker. And they'd come knock down all your tent pegs. And your tent would fall down, and then you had to wait till the still of night to try to put your tents back up. And so it was a very difficult 7 years. It wasn't just like, oh, we got to pay more taxes or we got to do a little more work. It was just literally everything they tried to do, these people would come in and destroy it. So it was a difficult time. And so Gideon gets called by God, and that's where we're going to start this story in Judges chapter 6, verse 11. It says, then the angel of the Lord sat beneath a great tree at Ophrah, which belonged to Joash, the clan of Abiezar. Anyway, yeah, y'all got that one. Gideon's son Joash was threshing wheat at the bottom of a winepress to hide the grain from the Midianites. The angel of the Lord appeared to him and said, mighty hero, the Lord is with you. What a cool way to be described, man. Like an angel is chilling in front of you, like, mighty hero, you. Verse 13. Sir, Gideon replied, if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? And where's all the miracles our ancestors told us about? Didn't they say the Lord brought us up out of Egypt? But now the Lord has abandoned us and handed us over to the Midianites. Then the Lord turned to him and said, go with the strength you have, you mighty hero, you, and rescue Israel from the Midianites. I'm sending you. But Lord, Gideon replied, how can I rescue Israel? My clan is the weakest in the whole tribe of Manasseh, and I am the least in my entire family. This dude's like, man, look, my family dumb, I'm dumb. Like, you came to the wrong tree. There's another Gideon. I know him. Let me go get him for you. Right? But this is what the Lord says. The Lord said to him, verse 16, I will be with you, and you will destroy the Midianites, as you are fighting against one man. Gideon replied, if you're truly going to help me, show me a sign to prove that this is really the Lord speaking to me. Have you ever had that question in your thought process before, when God might start talking to you and like, whoo, Lord, you got to show me a sign. You got to give me something. Like, somebody better come walk out from the neighborhood and be like, hey, God told me to say this to this person. Okay. This is really what Gideon's doing here. He's like, hey, hold on. You got to give me a sign, because you're calling me this hero. You're calling me this man of valor. But if we're really honest, Gideon is anything other than brave. Gideon is constantly trying to push away God. But God's view was not bound by Gideon's reality. And God's view of you is not bound to your reality. No matter what you're dealing with, no matter what your family background looks like, no matter how many times you may be messed up, no matter how many times you may be done the wrong thing, no matter how many times you may be been scared to reach out and do what God wants you to do, God does not lock you in, and he does not see you by the realities that you see yourself. Just like I was saying earlier, right? When we look at our weaknesses oftentimes define us rather than what God's definition of us is. And we're constantly thinking about our weaknesses. We're constantly thinking about, I'm not good enough. And God's not thinking that at all. God's saying, I have something amazing for you. If you'll just take the strength that you got. I remember one time going to the gym. It's been a while. It's been a while. This one time at the gym, no, anyway, so I can remember going to the gym one time, and I'm with my cousin, and my cousin's like, dude, you got this. And he's putting weight on the board, and I'm like, I ain't lifting this, dude. And he gets there, and he's like, come on, bro, and he's like pumping me up, and I'm an introvert. Y'all all know this, right? I like to kind of stay in my bubble, and we're in the gym, and he's screaming, and everybody's staring at me now, and I'm like, oh, this is wonderful. I'm like, they think I want to lift this, you know? And so I'm on the bench, and I'm like, all right, dude. And he's like, you got this, bro. You got the strength you need. And I get it down. I start pushing out, and I'm like, hey, I got the first one. I'm like, yes. Come down for the second one. I'm like, oh, no. I'm like, bro, you got to help me. No, you got this, man. You got it. I'm like, bro, you got to help me. And so oftentimes, though, that's our reality when we forget that God is ready to help us as long as we're willing to put our strength into it. Oh, y'all didn't catch that. It wasn't about if I could push the weight or not. It was rather or not I was willing to trust the strength in me and the person who was going to be willing to help me pull it. And as long as I got my strength in it, he can help me get it up easier. All right. And so this is what Gideon is struggling with in this scenario. So let's look what he says in verse 18. It says, don't go away until I come back to bring my offering to you. Whew. I can preach right there for a month. No, I'm kidding. Gideon's like, hold on. If you're God, I'm going to bring you an offering. Because this is the culture of the day that started way back when with Moses. And every time that God gave a promise, an offering was given to receive the promise. And I tell you guys this all the time, that we're not just about receiving money. An offering is so many different things. It's about giving of yourself. And when you give of yourself, when God calls you to do something, this is what happens. And he answers, I will stay here until you return. Verse 19, Gideon hurried home. He cooked a young goat, and with a basket of flour, he baked some bread without yeast. Then carrying the meat in a basket and the broth in a pot, he brought them out and presented them to the angel who was under the great tree. The angel of God said to him, place the meat and unleavened bread on this rock and pour the broth over it. And Gideon did as he was told. Then the angel of the Lord touched the meat and bread with the tip of his staff in his hand, and fire flamed up from the rock, consumed all he had brought. And then the angel of the Lord disappeared. Thanks a lot, right? There went my food, and you burned it up, and now you're going. Like, what's going on here? If I could get my head when I'm preaching, it's funny. Verse 22 says, when Gideon realized that it was the angel of the Lord, he cried out, "O sovereign Lord, I'm doomed. I've seen the angel of the Lord's face, the angel of the Lord face to face." How crazy is that? I can see this played out in my head so well, because I'm like, I can be Gideon in this story, because I have so many of my own weaknesses and so many things that I beat myself up about not being able to do certain things or not being good with certain areas of life. And I can see Gideon, he's showing up and he's like, all right, man, I cooked you some good duck. Just shot it yesterday. Got all the BBs out of it. It's good, good mallard. Huh? Yeah, shoot in the head. I'm not as good as you, Jesse. So he got this duck, right? And he's like, man, look, I got you some good bread, man. Some good bread. It's unleavened, though. It's holy. It's holy bread. But I got some gravy. So we're going to take this unleavened bread, put it in the gravy. We got some duck. It's going to be a good time. It's an offering to you. We're going to break bread together. God's going to, and the angel's like, hey, let me show you what I'm going to do with what you brought. Poof, bye. And he's like, oh, dear God, what just happened? I'm not worthy of this moment. I can't handle this moment. This is bigger than I was expecting. I just thought I was going to show something, and then God was just going to take what I brought and use something that I brought. But God says, no, it's not about what you bring. It's about what I want to do. And when he brought something to God that he thought was going to be really cool, God said, no, it's more than what you brought. It's about what we're about to accomplish together. And so now Gideon's freaking out because he realizes that what he thought was something great that he was bringing forth as an offering, God says it's not good enough. And so when the angel disappears, he freaks out because now all of a sudden he realizes, holy cow, that was really God. Because nobody else can make flames come out of a rock. Butane was not around yet. And so here he sees this and he's freaking out. And in verse 23, God's so cool. It says, it's all right, the Lord replied. Do not be afraid. You will not die. And Gideon built an altar to the Lord there and named it Yahweh Shalom, which means the Lord is peace. The altar remains in Ophrah in the land of the clan of Ibizar to this day. And what I think is really cool about this moment, and what I want to bring out about this is this. When God does something amazing, Gideon took the moment to build an altar. And I wonder how many times in our lives we forget to place a marker, a significant bookmark in our lives when God did a significant event. You know, it's so important when God does something that's significant in your life to take a moment to stop and bookmark it. You know, I mean, how many of y'all remember growing up as a kid and you get to a place and you put your bookmark in, right? 9 times out of 10, we used to hold our bookmark there because that's where we left off. Well, I can remember as a kid, my grandma used to take her bookmarks, but then she had extra tabs. And when she would find a cool place in a book that she really enjoyed, she would tab that particular page. And it was a bookmark to go back and read that portion of the book again, right? We need to be doing the same thing in our lives. When God does something really good in our lives, we need to put some type of a bookmark place, a tab in place to say, I can remember when God showed up. Because it's not just important for you to remember, it's important for you to be able to share. Because everyone that walked past that altar from that day forth knew that was Gideon's moment with God, where he received the peace that he needed, at least for a little while. Verse 25 says, that night the Lord said to Gideon, take the second bull from your father's herd. I actually tried to do some research. I'm like, what's the significance of the second bull? And I haven't found it yet. But so when I find it, I'll let you know. I'm like, why not the first bull? It says, took the second bull from your father's herd, the one that is 7 years old. Pull down your father's altar to Baal. And if you remember back in the first installment of Judges, I kind of explained Baal and this next person, the Asherah poles. So Baal was provider. The Asherah poles were beauty. Right? So he said, hey, tear down this false provider and get rid of this false sense of beauty. Is what God is. This is what that's really saying. Then it says, build an altar to the Lord your God here on this hilltop sanctuary, laying the stones carefully. Sacrifice the bull as a burnt offering on the altar, using the fuel, using as fuel the wood from the Asherah poles you cut down. So Gideon took 10 of his servants and did as the Lord commanded, but he did it at night, because he was still afraid of the other members of his father's household and the people in the town. So Gideon was brave enough to build an altar of peace, but he was still scared and still had some shortcomings in his life. And he wasn't brave enough to be like, hey, Pops, I'm taking your bull and I'm going to kill it. And at the same time, I'm going to mess up all the outside of the house. That's cool? You cool? All right, good. And this is why he messed up the outside of the house, because listen, it says, verse 20, it says, early the next morning, as the people of town began to stir, someone discovered that the altar of Baal had been broken down, and that the Asherah poles beside it had been cut down. In their place, a new altar had been built, and on it were the remains of the bull that had been sacrificed. That's just nasty. Like, why you want to do that, Gideon? Like, you're going to go and you're going to take, because I don't know if y'all remember, if y'all ever learned the sacrificial rituals that they had to do back in those days, it was nasty. They had to cut animals in certain ways, and they had to remove the intestines in certain ways and the hearts and all this stuff. So literally, they would have been doing all this stuff, and then he's like, well, here's your new altar. Isn't it beautiful? There's the intestines right there. That's the stomach. I think that's the third stomach. Because it was a bull, so I don't know how many. They got like 3 stomachs or something like that. And then they had the head on top of this thing, of the cut-off bull. Craziness. Verse 29. I didn't hear you. I'm going to just skip that because you're going to make me laugh. So verse 29. So the people said to each other, who did this? And after asking around and making a careful search, they learned that it was Gideon, the son of Joash. I read that, and I'm like, man, what kind of careful search they did? They didn't do no careful search. They're like, psst, hey, who did that? You know who did it, don't you? You know who did it? No, I didn't know. No. Gideon. Yeah, it was Gideon. Wink twice if it was Gideon. That's how I see that going down. And so it says this, in verse 30, it says, bring out your son. The men of the town demanded of Joash, he must die for destroying the altar of Baal and cutting down the Asherah poles. But Joash shouted to the mob that confronted him, why are you defending Baal? Will you argue his case? Whoever pleads his case will be put to death by morning. If Baal truly is a god, let him defend himself and destroy the one who broke down his altar. From then on, Gideon was called Jerubbaal, which means let Baal defend himself, because he broke down Baal's altar. And how amazing is it? Because we know that Gideon would have been afraid of his father's household. Yep. But yet, who was the one who came to his defense? His father. Isn't this such a beautiful picture of our Heavenly Father who will come to our defense when we make the stands for the things we're supposed to do? But this story gets more interesting. Verse 33. It says, soon afterward, the armies of Midian, Amalek, and the people of East formed an alliance against the Israelites and crossed the Jordan, camping in the valley of Jezreel. Then the Spirit of the Lord clothed Gideon with power. I like that. I like that translation too. It clothed him with power. You ever just put on the right outfit? Y'all know what I'm talking about. You know, you could be feeling horrible about your day, and you put on the right outfit, and you see yourself in the mirror like, ooh, hey, where you came from, right? Instagram worthy. Hey, so you're just doing your thing. This is what kind of happened with Gideon in this moment, because remember, Gideon's scary. He doesn't want to fulfill this. He's doing things at night. He's been sneaky so far. He was found in the winepress, hidden, right? Everything Gideon's done has been very secretive. And then all of a sudden, he's clothed with power. And he blew a ram's horn as a call to arms. And the men of the clan of Abiezer, or whatever you say it, came to him. And he also sent messengers all throughout the area. And every village and every warrior came, and they all responded. And then Gideon said to God, if you are truly going to use me to rescue Israel as you promised, prove it to me in this way. And I will put out a wool fleece on the threshing floor tonight. If the fleece is wet with dew in the morning, but the ground is dry, then I will know that you are going to help me rescue Israel as you promised. That's a strange request if we're being very, very honest with each other. So I want you to wet my rug, but keep the grass dry. Has anyone ever walked outside and you thought your rug was dry and you had socks on and you stepped in it? That's the worst feeling ever. And so this is what Gideon's like, hey, just keep everything else dry, but make where I want to wipe my feet off nasty. And so verse 38, it says, and then and that is just what happened. When Gideon got up early the next morning, he squeezed the fleece and wrung out a whole bowl full of water. Then Gideon said to God, please don't be angry with me, but let me make one more request. Let me use this fleece again for one more test. This time, let the fleece remain dry while the ground around it is wet with dew. So that night, God did as Gideon asked. The fleece was dry in the morning, but the ground was covered with dew. What an amazing thing. First thing I want to point out before I get into the whole dew and stuff, because that's just crazy. I don't think any nation has ever had a greater army recruiter than Gideon. Gideon blew a horn and 32,000 people showed up. Because he had the right outfit on. He had the right outfit on. He was clothed with what God called him to do. And 32,000 people responded because he was clothed with what God had called him to do. And I just want to help remind you tonight, if you feel sometimes like Gideon, when you're clothed in what God has called you to do, all you got to do is blow a horn and people are going to show up. But then that wasn't quite enough. 32,000 people showed up. I'd been like, cool. All I did was blow a horn. I wasn't even in tune. It was just loud, and 32,000 people showed up. I'd have been like, let's go. Gideon's like, hey guys, thanks for showing up. I got a plan tonight. I can't tell you the plan yet because it's kind of weird. I don't really want to share it with y'all because y'all might leave. But I got to talk to God a little bit tonight, and we're going to do a little thing, and if that works out, we're going to be ready to go. And he puts this thing out, and he puts God to the test. And it works out in his favor. He's like, might not have been God. Maybe somebody heard me in my conversation, and they came and dumped some water on the rug. So Gideon's like, tell you what, let's try a new scenario. Because somebody kind of heard you. It was dry last night. Yeah, did you feel any humidity? There was no humidity out there, right? We're going to try another test, God. Now I want you to make everything else wet, but keep my wool dry. And God shows up again. And this time he can't blame it on the water sprinklers because his wool was dry. But can you imagine being the 32,000? Chapter 6. Can you imagine being the people that showed up? Because I always read this story thinking just about Gideon. But people showed up for Gideon. Yeah. And they waited 2 days in his insecurities to find out why they were even there. Yeah. And I just want to remind you one more time, when you're doing what God wants you to do, even when you're insecure and you're struggling to come up with the ideas and the plans to move forward, people will still stand with you, and they are behind you, and they will follow you unless God tells them something like this. Chapter 7. So Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, and his army got up early and went as far as the spring of Herd. The armies of Midian were camped north of them in the valley hill of Moreh. The Lord said to Gideon, you have too many people, too many warriors with you. If I let all of you fight the Midianites, the Israelites will boast to me that they saved themselves in their own strength. That does sound like us, doesn't it? Therefore, tell the people, whoever is timid or afraid may leave this mountain and go home. So 22,000 of them went home. Y'all, I'd have felt so played. I'd be like, man, I blew a horn. 32 of y'all showed up. Y'all waited 2 days for me. By the way, if anybody's freaked out about this, you're going to go home. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I was kidding. That's what I would have done. That would have been my reaction to Gideon. He's like, whoa, time out. I was just kidding. Y'all saw the test. It works. Okay, see y'all later. Bye. You sure? Sure. Dude, I saw you shoot that arrow early. You were really good. But they left, leaving only 10,000 who were willing to fight. But the Lord told Gideon, there's still too many. Hey, come on, God. Bring them down to the spring, and I will test them to determine who will go with you and who will not. So Gideon took his warriors down to the water, and the Lord told him, divide the men into two groups. In one group, put all those who cup water in their hands and lap it up with their fingers like dogs. That's just weird, by the way. And the other group put all. Let me do that again. And the other group put all those who kneel down and drink with their mouths in the stream. Only 300 men drank from their hands. All the others got down on their knees and drank with their mouths in the stream. And the Lord told Gideon, with these 300 men, I will rescue you and give you victory over the Midianites. Send all the others home. And this story has so much meaning to me, not just from the Bible standpoint, but I can remember being a 12-year-old boy at Word of Life when we were in Wyandotte, and my mom and dad were the youth pastors, and we used to, I wish we still had that banner. We used to have a banner that had the world on it with this, what was it, a cross coming out of it or something? So, I got to remember, I was 12. So there was this cross coming out of this thing, and on top of it, the banner said Gideon's 300. And it was this constant charge to us that it doesn't matter how big we are, it's a matter of what God tells us to do. And I made a statement Sunday that I want to reiterate today. I made a statement that growth is an awesome thing. The more people we have, the more things we can do for God, the more resources we have to do for God, and all that stuff is awesome. But growth is not the goal. Growth is not the goal. The goal is having healthy people that can see who God really is. That it's not about all the frills. It's not about all the things that we do. And everything we do is awesome. Every outreach that we have is awesome. Everything that we try to do to help our community, all those things are awesome. I'm not denying those things. I'm not trying to put and make those things small. But we don't do those for any other reason than to make people healthy. And the more healthy we can make people, that's our real goal. And when growth comes from that, it's awesome. But you know what? Small churches are awesome too. So it's not about the size. It's not a competition to see who has the largest church or who has the most people in the seats. It's all about how many healthy Christians do we have that can know God and know that God is real. Yeah. Not just a person in the seat, but someone who really knows that God has their back. That's our real goal. And this is what's kind of going on in this situation. God was wanting to find some real people that's going to follow no matter what, because the instructions that God gives was really crazy. So let's keep looking at this. Verse 7. The Lord told Gideon, with these 300 men, I'll and give you victory over the Midianites. Send all the others home. So Gideon collected the provisions and ram horns of the other warriors and sent them home. And he kept the 300 men with him. The Midianite camp was in the valley just below Gideon. That night, the Lord said, get up, go down to the Midianite camp, for I have given you victory over them. Now, I've been woken up a few times in my life by a prompting of the Spirit. And God will say, do this, or pray this, or read this. And every single time, God has showed up for me. Every single time. And God shows up for Gideon. He said, get up, go fight. You got this. I know it's 2 o'clock in the morning. It's okay, just go. But watch what Gideon replies. But if you're afraid to attack, this is God telling him, but if you're afraid to attack, go down to the camp with your servant Purah and listen to what the Midianites are saying, and you'll be greatly encouraged. Then you'll be eager to attack. So Gideon just bypassed the second option and went to town and went to fight them. No. Gideon is still insecure and still not knowing if this is really God or not. So Gideon took Purah and went down to the edge of the enemy camp. And the armies of Midian, Amalek, and the people of the east had settled in that valley. And I'm just going to kind of go through this real fast. So Gideon crept down, verse 13. Gideon crept up just as the men were telling his companion about a dream. The man said, I have this dream. And in my dream, a loaf of boiling bread came tumbling down into the Midianite camp. It hit a tent, turned it over, and knocked it flat. That's a big old piece of bread. That's all. I'll tackle it, though. I'll give it a shot. Verse 14. His companion answered, your dream can mean only one thing. God has given Gideon, son of Joash, the Israelites, victory over Midian and all of its allies. And Gideon heard the dream and its interpretation. He bowed and worshiped before the Lord, and then he returned to the Israelite camp and shouted, get up, for the Lord has given you victory over the Midianite hoarders. Now, before I finish this up, because I got to wrap it up, we're getting close. This was God showing pure grace. Because if you read the Old Testament enough, you know that God oftentimes wasn't very patient in the Old Testament. We know now that the Old Testament is for what? Our inspiration and knowledge, right? And that's what we read the Old Testament for now. It's to get inspiration from it, and it's to gain knowledge from it. How did God operate? How did the people learn? How did things go around? And it inspires us. The story of Gideon should inspire all of us. And we know the New Testament is now how we're called to live under the new covenant, how Jesus taught us, what Jesus told us to do, all these different things, right? So we know that things changed when Jesus showed up, but God's grace was still sufficient even back in the Old Testament. And with Gideon, God understood that his calling and what he was going to be able to do was worth the extra effort. It was worth the extra effort. There's not a person in here, and I want to try to encourage you tonight with this. No matter how many times you feel like maybe you pushed God away and you haven't done what he's called you to do, you can still be like Gideon. Gideon, time after time after time, say, God, I need something more. I need something more. I need something more. You got to give me something more. I'm ready to do what you want me to do, but you got to give me something more. Has anyone ever done that besides me? Right? I'm like, God, you got to help. You got to show me something. I'm like, I want to do this, but you got to give me something more. I shared with the church when we started discussing the changes for the church. I sat outside in front of that eagle out there for almost an hour and a half one night, and I'm like, God, you got to show me something more. You got to show me something more. You got to show me that this is really what you want to do, right? All of us can put ourselves in where Gideon was in this situation. But this was the moment where it says, hey, if you're afraid, I got your back. In fact, not only will I use what you're afraid of to encourage you, but I'll use what you're afraid of to give you the strength you need. And he went down there and he got encouraged and got the strength he needed from his enemies. Not from the dream, not from being woken up in the middle of the night and God showing up and talking to him. It took someone else to say, man, I'm scared of these people. Verse 16 says, he divided the 300 men into 3 groups and gave each man a ram's horn and a clay jar with a torch in it. Then he said to them, keep your eyes on me. When I come to the edge of the camp, do just as I do. As soon as I and those with me blow the ram's horn, blow your horns too, and all around the entire camp, and shout for the Lord and for Gideon. Now he's brave enough to use his own name. All this time you want to hide Gideon, but now it's fighting time. Now you want people to be, it's for Yahweh and Gideon. What's up, Gideon? I said it. I can just see that going down. So it was just after midnight and after changing the guard when Gideon and the 100 men that were with him reached the camp. And suddenly they blew their horns and broke the clay jars, which was to symbolize swords coming and clashing. And then all 3 groups blew their horns and broke their jars. And they lifted their torches. And just to summarize the story, the Midianites freaked out so bad they started killing each other. And the 300 guys never had to pull out a weapon. They just needed a glass jar, a horn, and a light. And that is so significant for us. Because God calls us to be jars of clay, to be a voice in the wilderness, and to shine his light for all to see. And when we are willing to just be used by him, he can use a fragile glass jar. He can take a ram horn that makes a lot of noise. Some of y'all make a lot of noise. Some of y'all more quiet. It's okay. We all got a horn, though. And a light to win the victory. I love what Franklin D. Roosevelt says. Courage is the absence of fear. Is not the absence of fear, but rather the assessment that something else is more important than fear. Oftentimes what we're struggling with is often way more important than the struggle that we're going through. What God is putting us through, or allowing us to go through, I should say, is always for his benefit in our lives. I will teach this forever. Every struggle you go through, God's not sitting out there like, oh, sorry about that. He's sitting out there waiting and saying, you will understand this one day. Every single trial you're going through, he's sitting out there saying, I can save you, but you're going to understand this one day. Gideon, I could have made this easier on you, but you're going to understand this one day. And we're going to grab the last part of Gideon's life next week. But even Paul said this in the New Testament in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9 and 10. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weakness, so that in Christ's power may rest on me. This is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weakness, insults and hardships and persecutions and difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. Paul knew the story of Gideon too. And I can promise you, when he made that statement, it was probably right after he got finished doing a study through Judges, and he probably read about Gideon. He said, ooh, Corinthians are going to like this one. I just got inspired. I just got some knowledge re-downloaded in me. Let me write this down. And because we can't be afraid of our weaknesses. We can't be afraid to keep asking God sometimes. Don't be scared. People always come and I'm so scared to ask God. Don't be scared to ask God. I tell people all the time, if you need to fight with Jesus, fight. You're like, what you mean by that? I'm like, sometimes you just need to shout. Sometimes you got to get it off your chest. Look up to heaven and say, why? Oftentimes you might not like the answer you get back, but he'll give you something. Well, you remember that time? No, I don't. But let's be the people God calls to be and watch how God will use us, even in our fragile states. Amen? Woo, I got through all that. It's only 8:02. I'm excited. And next week, we're going to be digging into into some more Judges, and it's going to be a good time. Amen? So would y'all stand with me as I bless you? Father, I thank you for your word. And Lord, I pray that as we continue to study your word, that you will continue to inspire us and give us everything we need. And Lord, I pray that we will learn how to take things that we learn in the Old Testament and in your word and how we can use that for our inspiration to inspire our own lives and our own struggles that we're going through. And if there's anyone here that's been struggling like Gideon struggled with his confidence, with his ability to do what you called him to do, God, I pray tonight that you will reveal yourself to your people and that they will feel your strength. They will be clothed with your strength, just as Gideon was. And even when they still question you, you will always show back up, and you will always give them the confirmation they need to continue to do the work you called them to do. So, Lord, bless your people as they leave this place tonight. Give them the strength and the courage they need to do everything you called them to do. In Jesus' name, amen.